Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. How's everybody doing? I trust everybody's doing just fine. But anyhow, folks, what's happening? What's happening? Whoops, I got some issues there with a double video, double audio, all that good stuff. Anyway, happy Memorial Day. That's what we should say. I don't know quite if that's the case, but we're remembering those who have fought for the nation. But anyhow, we have a great show for you. Welcome aboard. If you are on Substack, when you check in, don't forget, put your city and state so that I can call you out. Anyway, we have so far, the person winning the charts today is, or winning the message game today is AVQ. It's El Senor Michael Rudden got in here number one. Number two, we have Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. Michael Rudden from Brooklyn, New York. We've got Paul Fleming from Powder Spring, Georgia. We have Eric Hayes from Kingwood, Texas. We have Paul Fleming from, I think I got Paul already. We have Harry from Missouri City, Texas. Lee the Bearcat from Austin, Texas. Adam says probably Substack audio. Overlap default setting. I think I fixed that. I think that is fixed. We should be okay now. Lowell Gallagher, Dolores Gaitan, welcome aboard, sis. How you doing? Anyway, we got a great show for you today. Got quite a few videos, but one of them is too long for me to play, depending on how things turn out here. But anyhow, let's get started this way. I want to play. We're going to get out of the big bad bill for the time being, although this is pertinent as well. Bridge MCP sent me a video that I hadn't seen before with AOC, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, where she went ahead and gave a hell of a 5-minute speech in the committee meeting. I want you guys to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side. This is rather important, but beforehand, Judith Osborne is from Bourne, Illinois. Is it Bourne, Illinois, or Osborne, Illinois? I think it's Bourne, Illinois. Welcome aboard, Judith. Great to have you here. I think and we have Adam W. from Johnston, PA, Pennsylvania. Great to have you here. Anybody else in Substack want to tell me where they are before I jump to the video? Let's see if anybody else has showed up in the other chats. But anyway, all right, let's go ahead, do the video, and I'll get back with you guys. Salute you next time around. As you know, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they were going to save money by finding waste, fraud, and abuse. So we have El Senor Musk, who goes into Congress, goes into government, and attempt to save $2 trillion. Well, he couldn't find $2 trillion, so he then attempted to find $1 trillion. Well, he couldn't find $1 trillion, so he then said he saved $150 billion and left the job with his tail between his leg as his faltering Tesla company started to fall apart. Well, the guy's just as incompetent, really, as Donald Trump. They make him out to be a baby genius. What he is somebody who has used his unearned fortune to buy other people's intellect. But that's beside the point. It turns out that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did something about waste, fraud, and abuse, or rather, she proposed something to do about waste, fraud, and abuse. And one of the biggest places we have waste, fraud, and abuse that could really get us about $120 billion real quickly is in getting rid of Medicare Advantage, or at least stopping the upcoding that Medicare Advantage likes to do, which means they charge a lot of money for you to the government, but they don't give you the service that they've charged the government for. It's called upcoding, right? So she has proposed a bill that has been proposed similar before with Kennedy and others in the Senate to fix that problem. And again, that would save about $120 billion just from Medicare Advantage alone per year. Think about that. It'll save a whole lot of money, because the corporations rip off Medicare. The waste doesn't come from government. The waste comes from private corporations that rip the government off. So what she did is she explained perfectly how Medicare Advantage work, how it rips it off, and what can be done. Let's take a listen to that, and then we'll come back where we'll talk about what we really need to do is get rid of private insurance altogether. But let's go ahead and listen to what she has to say.
For months, we have been hearing the Republican majority talk about addressing waste, fraud, and abuse in our healthcare systems and in government systems writ large. One of the things I have found interesting in the discussions around waste, fraud, and abuse is that it curiously omits corporate waste, corporate fraud, corporate profiteering, and corporate abuse of public tax dollars all the time. And whether it's the failed audits of the Pentagon that get glossed over, whether it is the immense, and we've seen this, in plenty of oversight hearings on a bipartisan basis, defense contractors that are defrauding the public dime. But we have this in the healthcare space as well, particularly in the form of Medicare Advantage and what happens within Medicare Advantage. As many people know, Medicare itself is a health insurance program run by the federal government that covers people over the age of 65 and some people with disabilities. But Medicare Advantage is not the same thing as Medicare. Medicare Advantage is for-profit insurance. Medicare is public insurance. And listen, Medicare Advantage plans can be popular at first. These insurance companies will make the health insurance plans look good because up front, when you're healthy and don't need to go to the doctor, it looks like you save a few bucks compared to Medicare. But then when you get sick, that's when the sky falls down. That's when costs skyrocket. And when you really need care, you either can't get it in Medicare Advantage or you have to pay so much more out of your own pocket on a program that's ostensibly supposed to be done with public dollars. And these Medicare Advantage programs, the reason this unfolds in this way is because they are run by for-profit insurance companies. Companies like Cigna, Humana, and United Healthcare. They will take public taxpayer dollars that are intended for caring for Medicare eligible populations, and then they will take all of that money. They will make people look sicker than they are because there's an incentive to what is known as upcode. And then they pocket the difference because they will deny people the care that they need. Traditional Medicare, real Medicare, pays doctors and hospitals directly for the medical services they provide. Medicare Advantage is a middleman that denies people care, then upcodes them to make them to look sicker, and then they pocket all of that public money. They pocket the difference in their own profit to pay their CEOs and to yield shareholder profit. And then when people actually do need more care, private insurance companies under Medicare Advantage don't want to pay for it. And all of this adds up to private insurance companies under Medicare Advantage taking somewhere between $80 billion and $140 billion per year from the federal government that they then pocket in their own profits. That's a lot of your waste, fraud, and abuse margin right there. $80 to $140 billion per year. So my amendment today is a fusion of several Republican and Democratic supported pieces of legislation. Today, I would like Representative Ruiz and myself are offering up the bipartisan No Upcode Act, originally presented by the Senate Health Committee Chair, Senator Cassidy of Louisiana, as an amendment to this bill. It will go after that $80 to $140 billion in corporate waste, fraud, and abuse, and then it will take that money back in what's being pocketed, and it will reinvest it in actual Medicare and healthcare for everyday Americans to get enhanced and better healthcare that they need and deserve. It will save American taxpayers an estimated $124 billion over 10 years. It is fiscally responsible. Those savings, instead of going to tax breaks for billionaires and corporations, will then be reinvested in Medicare. This reinvestment in funds, which is from a bipartisan policy championed by my colleagues, Representative Ruiz. In fact, we have a Republican representative who is also a co-sponsor on that bill, will ensure doctors are receiving adequate payment for the life-saving services that they provide, that our seniors and people with disabilities get the care that they need, and that profiteering companies no longer are getting away with this loophole.
There we go. I couldn't agree more. Now, look, the problem that we have in healthcare is healthcare isn't something that you can go buy off the shelf like you do other products. In other words, if I go to the store and I see a screwdriver and I don't like the price of that screwdriver, I go to another store and look for the price of that screwdriver. If I break a leg, if I get cancer, if I get all these things, I can't go to different hospitals or different doctors and shop around. First of all, the bandwidth isn't there to do that. And secondly, whereas I have the time to shop for a screwdriver, when I have a broken leg, when I have a broken neck, when I have a broken whatever or a defective organ, I can't sit back down there and spend the time shopping around. So healthcare is very different than buying a product. In other words, healthcare does not belong in a capitalist market. A screwdriver belongs in a capitalist market. A car belongs in a capitalist market. A healthcare doesn't belong in a capitalist market. It is something that should be run by an entity and run by the government. No doubt about it. Because if we do that, we get rid of all the charges these private companies must come up with. They must come up with advertising costs. They must come up with bonuses for executives. They must come up for shareholder value and shareholder dividends. And so there's so many expenses that come out of the premium you pay in private insurance or the government pays for Medicare Advantage, which is nothing more than private insurance, which means it costs more than Medicare proper. We need to wake up. We need to get intelligent. We need to use math because math tells you it is impossible. And this is not up for debate. It is impossible for the private sector to be able to pay for healthcare at a cheaper rate than a single payer government run system. And we have an example because, again, Medicare's overhead is under 3%. The overhead for the private sector Medicare Advantage is way north of 20%, and they do all kinds of tricks to get around it. Upticking, charging the government more than they actually gave you in services. It's a racket. It's waste, fraud, and abuse by the private sector. And if Elon Musk wanted to find a lot of money, that's where he needed to go. But of course, he wouldn't touch that or the Defense Department. Of course, he wouldn't touch that or the Defense Department. All right, for those that are just chiming in, yes, today's show is live. Today's show is live. Tomorrow may not be live, but I have a great interview for you to have tomorrow because I have to go to a graduation. A relative of mine is just getting out of med school here in Houston, so I've happened to go to that graduation. But let me just tell you, welcome aboard, Lisa Blair from Atlanta, Georgia. And I said it wrong. Judith Osborne is from Decatur, Illinois. You know, in the past, I used to say Decatur. I'm Panamanian, so when we kind of do the spellings literally, we would say Decatur, and then I know it's English, so I'll say Decatur. Then somebody says, no, it's Decatur, Decatur. So okay, it's Decatur. All right, John Stone nails it where he says Medicare Advantage is a scam. You're absolutely right. We also have Susan Jagoda. These are folks on Substack. Says everybody loves their health care until they get sick. If you get Medicare if you get Medicare Advantage, you love it until you get sick. Then they try their best to get out of it because why again? It is private insurance, and private insurance for healthcare is a scam. Okay, even if whether you're in, it's a scam. Adam W says Tom Hartman said phone reps stand to get around 2K, $2,000 incentive bonus to convince seniors to sign up for Advantage versus Medicare that pays out around $20. Let me give you a joke. Good friend of mine, he died a couple years ago. He was selling. I remember we used to go. There's a restaurant called Luby's out here, and every so often he'll come and get me and say, "Brother, come on and have lunch with me." I just got through with getting a lot of these old people in this area because Kingwood has a lot of older people in some sections of Kingwood, and he would take them all to Luby's and to get a few, and out of that he'll get a few of them signed up for Medicare Advantage. They were on traditional Medicare, and the sales pitch he always used was, "It cost you nothing because they transfer from their traditional Medicare to this to Medicare Advantage. They no longer have to pay for the what is it called uh, the side insurance. They no longer have to pay for the supplemental. All of that is taken care of, and he just signs them up. And every time he signs up somebody, he gets a few $1,000s. So he may get 20 people to show up, and three may sign up. That's a $6,000 trip he made from downtown Houston into Kingwood. He gets three people. He leaves Kingwood with $6,000, and the company also gives him a whole lot of Luby's dinner cards. And he'll call me and say, "Egberta, I just finished. Come on and have lunch with me." And he takes out the dinner card and he just give them the. It's a racket. They make so much money. They make so much money that it's a giveaway. So when I hear Adam W on Substack says, Tom Hartman said they give people $2,000 to steer them towards Medicare Advantage, makes sense to me because the government's going to give them about $10,000 for every sign up. For every year, they get $10,000 or so for that person, and then they try not to give them any kind of health care, or they try to undercut the doctors who are serving them. It's a racket. It is a racket. All right, we've got Carl Cox is in from let's see, from Riverdale. I'm going to remember that Riverdale, Georgia. Hello, Carl. How you doing? Let's see what else we've got here before I jump to the other video. Yeah, I just got attacked by May Wood. I read it and I kind of dropped it. Welcome, Harry Denson from Missouri says AOC is correct to take the money that money that privatized Medicare Advantage take from the patient's consumer and invest it back into regular government Medicare. Exactly. Let's see what else we got here. Medigap. Yeah, you're right about that, Michael. Medigap. That's what it's called. All right. But what's the name? Told me I should be taking a break today. No, we don't take breaks. We don't take breaks. We got to keep. Trump and these guys are on TV right now. They're not taking a break. We got to keep the people informed. We've got to keep the people informed. Susan Jagoda says, with traditional Medicare, you need a Medicare supplement. Medicare is 80% covered costs, and the supplement covers the other 20%. Exactly. You nailed it. All right. I want to show you guys something that's happening here in Texas. The 10 Commandments is going to be, it seems like the governor is going to sign the 10 Commandments law, which means every school has to put up the 10 Commandments. Hey, look, we have turned into a religious cult here in Texas. This is now a religious cult in Texas, okay? We now have a, what is it called? When it's a religious government, I can't remember what it's called now. But I want you to hear one of my favorite representatives here in Texas, how he addressed it. This is beautiful what he did. I want you guys to listen to this. I'm going to put it on the center stage to block me out, and then you're going to hear it right this minute.
What is the fourth commandment?
Keep the Sabbath.
Part of keeping the Sabbath holy is not working on the Sabbath.
That is, yeah.
What day is the Jewish Sabbath?
It is on Saturday.
And what day is it today?
It is Saturday. Here we are.
The Christian Sabbath is what day?
Sunday, in honor of the day that Jesus rose from the dead.
And we're scheduled to give this bill a final vote on what day of the week?
It's ironic, isn't it?
Would you be willing to postpone your bill so that we're not breaking the Ten Commandments by working on the Jewish or Christian Sabbath?
I love that you said that because
You're saying that you'd rather tell people to follow the Ten Commandments than follow it yourself?
I would have rather have had this bill passed the other day when it was time.
We as a legislature are about to force every teacher in the state to post the Ten Commandments in their classrooms.
If they are
members
donated.
of the Texas legislature follow the Ten Commandments?
So again, this bill is about honoring our historical, educational, and judicial heritage with the displaying of the Ten Commandments.
The ninth commandment is thou shalt not bear false witness. Are you aware of any legislators who have lied about anything?
That is, you know, there might be one coming up in a minute if you keep talking. We'll see.
The seventh commandment is thou shalt not commit adultery.
Yes.
Do you think that members of the legislature should focus more on trying to follow the Ten Commandments rather than telling others to follow them?
I am, you know, it is incumbent on all of us to follow God's law.
What is the
Now, I find that line, I mean, that is a young representative here in Texas, and he is so good. He is so good at really showing how hypocritical our Texas legislature is. And we are likely the worst legislature. We have in Texas, the lieutenant governor is relatively more powerful than the governor. So right now he is holding a lot of bills. He's holding the governor hostage to do a whole lot of bills. We just went ahead and we have a big THC business in Texas. All right, big THC business in Texas. A lot of people, after they relax the rules on THC, they start. A lot of shops came into fruition. They make edibles, all these things. I think it's a $5 billion industry or something of that nature. This the party of freedom, the party that believes in personal freedom, personal responsibility, the party that still allows alcohol to be served, which is more dangerous than THC, the party that still allows alcohol to be served. You know, actually alcohol destroys your liver, destroys your kidney, destroys your families, all this kind of stuff alcohol has the potential to do. But they are going to get rid of THC, which means several tens of thousands of people are going to be out of work. The factories that make the edibles, the factories that make the gummy bears and all these kinds of stuff, the factories that make the ointments, all of them are going to be illegal after September. Think about what he's doing to business under the tenets of religion. But they're not blocking alcohol. You would think if they thought so much about THC, maybe they'll say, well, also, alcohol is a bad thing. Let's go ahead and stop it. It just shows you not only the hypocrisy, but also the ignorance of those people that we have in charge in this country. Let's see. Adam says, why isn't he taking a break? After all, he's on on here listening. Ha ha ha. That's true. That's true. Adam also said those people don't believe in God and they know it. God's law while wearing Louis Vuitton. If that's funny. Yeah, in other words, all what they say about the rich person going through the eye of a needle again, you know what that is. Michael Ruddin says of the 10 Commandments, only three are laws: don't kill, don't steal, don't perjure, which is quite interesting. Let's talk to Ray Brackens, my dear brother Ray Brackens. How are you doing this afternoon?
Got an axe to grind. Why are you talking about Mr. Dan Patrick? you know, um, Shout out to my fellow activist, Miss Latanya Whittington. I don't know if she's listening, but she runs a very popular campaign here in Texas called Free the Weed.
Right, right.
And
I know
when
her.
that happened, I was real happy for her campaign, and as a consumer. I was happy that this substance, which, like you said, is less harmful than alcohol and has less side effects, Dan Patrick finds it fitting to make it illegal. Now, if I was a betting man, I'm willing to bet all that crap he says about, oh, it's poisoning the children, blah, blah, blah. They don't give a flying flip about these children, okay? Let me tell you what the deal is. Dan Patrick, I bet you any amount of money, he got stock in the beer and the alcohol company somewhere, and he's losing money. And I also want to add to that, he probably has stock in the criminal justice system, because by making this substance illegal, you also make the consumers illegal carriers of the substance, which
Exactly,
means
exactly.
the police can mess with you anytime they want. And now you don't have the liability to say, oh, I bought it from a shop. It was legally purchased here in a shop in Texas. They're just going to push the consumer base back into the black market, and it's going to make it a very, police nanny type state here in Texas, which, if I didn't have so much respect for your show, I would throw out an F bomb, but but yeah, F
Well,
Dan
I
Patrick with
appreciate you.
the
That
with
way I
the
don't have
with
to. That way I don't have to edit it when I put it onto the network, because this also plays on Pacifica later on. There are quite a few other stations that carry it. Now, here's the funny thing about it. Okay, you actually usurped what I was going to say, because what this tells me is that we are going to have law enforcement now that they have other methods to fill these jails. Because I mean, remember, the stuff about getting rid of these undocumented workers isn't going very well. They haven't been able to match either Obama or Biden's being deporters in chief. Well, Obama deported so many more, and so all these jails that they thought they were going to build to put all these people away, somehow it's not working out for them. I mean, I don't know if you realize that it's not working out for them. They can't find people to
no.
arrest, and that's the reason why they're just pulling people off of the streets, right? So they can't find people
Yeah,
to
it's a
arrest.
police state.
Yeah.
And
So
that makes me think about John Whitmire when I heard him I heard him at a forum the other night say, we need more money for police cars because we have to double up our cops. That's a bunch of malarkey if I ever heard any, because in my neighborhood, I guarantee you, Egberto, every day I'm driving down the main road in my neighborhood, I see at least, actually yesterday, I saw like 5 squad cars in one area. For what reason? I
mhm.
don't think it was warranted, but that's just my personal opinion. I think he's for like I say, malarkey. We don't need that many police. We got a 60% 60% of the city budget goes to police, and the other
Absolutely.
40% is what we have to scrape from to actually provide services and resources for our people.
It
So
is
tell me, how
ridiculous
does
the
that
amount.
make sense?
Yeah,
Unless
it is ridiculous the amount of money we spend on police. And again, we should actually break the police up. And for things that are violent, etc., we have the police. All other minor things, tickets and going to people's houses for different things. We need to get rid of all these police. Like I said, and I think I said this on KPFT, folks like myself, I never feel comfortable around police officers, especially, again, I simply don't. So, anyway, my brother, I got another video to play. Anything else you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, constables, Harris County, state troopers, between all of them law enforcements, we don't need any more police. And that's all I got to say on that, Egberto. But
Thank you, brother.
appreciate you for the time, man.
You have a wonderful day, brother. Thank you. All right, folks, look, Adam says, I've struggled with alcoholism throughout my life, and I can attest to it being one of the most destructive things I've ever consumed. And unlike addiction to food or nicotine, alcohol can do irreparable damage, irreparable harm in a single day of abuse. It can destroy your liver, it can destroy your marriage. You're so right, and thank you for that testimonial, my dear brother. That testimonial is very, very important. All right, let's continue here. Lee the Bearcat says, Egberto, Mr. O had 8 years and not the activist judges blocking him, right? So how could the current admin keep pace? Amazing, right? Amazing, amazing. We also have Lee the Bearcat says the Austin legislature has wasted the 150 days. We also have, let's see what else we got here. Anyway, let's go ahead and do the other video. This one has to do with how terrible Jake Tapper was yesterday. I want to play this and then we'll take it on the other side. Here we go. Speaker Johnson was interviewed by Jake Tapper about the one big beautiful bill. And of course, that one big beautiful bill, as they would have you believe, it's great for the economy. It's not going to blow the budget, as everybody knows it's going to blow the budget. It's not really going to transfer the wealth of middle class Americans to the top. It's really just to get the waste and abuse out of the system. That is how they're characterizing this bill. Well, initially, when Jake Tapper started an interview, one would sort of believe that maybe he's going to really push the speaker to talk about what this bill is really going to do. So what I'm going to do is play you what I consider the representative segment of that interview. I'm going to play you the representative segment of that interview, and then we'll go ahead and dissect why this type of interview allows this bill to be pushed through and gives cover to the evil the bill actually represents. So I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Debt. The number one threat to our nation right now is our debt. We take that very seriously. Congress has kicked the can down the road for decades, and we're out of road. And so we understand that it's our responsibility to fix this.
So there are 5 different independent scores of this legislation. Every one of them says that it will increase the deficit somewhere between $3.3 and $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, I get you take issue with the Congressional Budget Office and that they don't have dynamic scoring, all this. But this is the emerging consensus among everyone analyzing. They say you're kicking, not only are you kicking the can down the road, but you're making the problem worse. You're adding to the debt.
Well, I think that is dramatically overstated, and here's why. Those same groups can objectively see and acknowledge that this is the largest cut in spending in at least 30 years and arguably of all time. We're cutting over $1.5 trillion in federal spending while we check all the boxes and bring about a pro-growth economy. And the CBO has been panned because, as you said, they don't do dynamic scoring. What that means is they don't account for the growth that will be fostered by all the policies that are in this big piece of legislation. This is not theoretical, Jake. Just remember the last Trump administration. After the first 2 years, we brought about the greatest economy in the history of the world, not just the U.S. The growth was off the charts. It was an average of about 3% of growth in GDP. Why? Because we cut taxes and we cut regulations. We're doing the same thing this time around, but on steroids. This is a much larger package, a much more robust package with all these features that will really get the economy going, because wages will rise, job creators, entrepreneurs, risk takers will have more ability to expand their businesses. U.S. manufacturing onshore is being incentivized. All these things will work together to make the economy grow faster than many of these projections are putting forth. So we're not buying it. We'll see what happens happens, and we have the evidence to prove it from the past.
So the CBO doesn't get a vote, but my next guest, Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, does. And he wrote in the Wall Street Journal, quote, "The one big beautiful bill will almost certainly add to our deficits and debt." And he even called the bill the Titanic. What do you say to him?
Look, I love Ron Johnson. He's a dear friend, and he and I agree on our philosophy. We're limited government conservatives. We want to limit the size and scope of the government and make it work more efficiently and effectively. My response to him, and we've spoken about this over recent months, is that we're doing the best we can with the vote numbers that we have. In other words, we've got to turn this aircraft carrier. You don't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. It takes a mile of open ocean to do it. And it took us decades to get in this financial situation. We can't just flip a switch and get out of it overnight. One of the people that my friend Ron Johnson really respects is Russ Vought, who directs the Office of Management and Budget. And Russ is a big champion for this piece of legislation. He calls it historic. And he's a fiscal hawk, and so am I. So we're doing as much as we can. And I just encourage Ron to remember, in the House, we have 220 Republicans, a wide range of perspectives and a wide range of districts represented. And I've got to get to 217 votes to get this thing over the line. So as much as we can in as big increment as we can, I think we've achieved that here. And I just want them to remember that we got to deal within the realm of what's possible.
Now, I want to remind everybody who Russ Vought is. Russ Vought is one of the major authors of Project 2025. And Jake Tapper simply ignored that comment that he made. But before we tackle anything else, I want to tackle what he talks about the Trump economy, because Natalie Lago gets it right when she says the imaginary growth, just like a DJT 1.0 White House administration. She hits that on the nail when they talk about the growth that comes with tax cuts. Let's first remember something very important. Jake Tapper gave him a bone when he said, "I know you don't listen to the CBO, but what you do is because the CBO don't take into account what's called dynamic scoring." Dynamic scoring is when they take a look at what the economic effects of any legislation have on the economy. Well, they always claim that tax cuts create an effect on the economy, which is positive to grow the economy. The thing about it is we have a whole lot of proof that that's not true. We have Ronald Reagan versus Bill Clinton. Under the Ronald Reagan economy, there were a lot of jobs created after a big recovery. Under Bill Clinton, it multiplied many more jobs than Reagan created. That isn't spoken about because, again, the right wing has a better PR department, and the mainstream media doesn't spend a whole lot of time refuting or telling the truth. When we look at Donald Trump's economy proper, says data show Trump didn't build a great economy. He inherited it from whom again? Obama. And if you want to look at the numbers, we can look at them simply. As far as GDP growth, Obama was coming out of a huge downturn in the economy, which took several years to recover. And even with that, in his second term, he had comparable growth rates to Donald Trump. 2.4 for Obama, 2.5 for Donald Trump. But here's the kicker. Under Obama, more jobs were created, 215 per month under Obama versus 182 per month under Donald Trump. And these numbers are pre the pandemic. So you cannot use a pandemic as an excuse. Okay. So when we take a look at what actually occurred, if you look at the Dow Jones, of course, Obama had the crash to contend with and come back. Again, comparable numbers up. Change in unemployment rate. Look at the trajectory of the charts. He's just a continuation of the Obama economy. So when they talk about Donald Trump having a great economy, it has just been the continuation of what has occurred. But when it comes to debt, Donald Trump added a hell of a lot of debt for that economy. In other words, his tax cuts created a whole lot of debt. And let me explain a little thing about debt. Debt creates great immediate economies. All right. If I have $10, if the government if I get a $10 tax cut, That's $10 I have that I can spend. And if the government still has to pay that $10 that it pays for healthcare or pay for SNAP or whatever, that $10 still gets paid. So therefore, if I give a $10 tax cut and the government still has to spend the same amount of money, and you have to borrow that money to spend it, that doubles the amount of economic activity. So it is true that spending creates a lot of good within the economy, and tax cuts can actually create more spending in the economy if that tax cut doesn't come with spending cuts. And that's what Reagan used. That's what Trump used to increase his economy, while fiscally responsible Clinton, fiscally responsible Obama, fiscally responsible Biden, they played with both of these numbers to ensure that we just don't go completely out of whack. All these things are in the numbers. The fiscally irresponsible folks are Republicans and what they're doing. Now, how does this match with the big, beautiful bill? First of all, when we look at that dynamic scoring, disregard the dynamic scoring. The economy under the first term of Donald Trump proved that dynamic scoring for tax cut is a hoax. In fact, when you talk about tax cuts versus spending, there's something called the multiplier effect. In other words, if I spend more money, how many times does that dollar circulate in the economy to increase the GDP, the gross domestic product? If I give a tax cut, how much times does that money circulate in the economy to give a tax cut? To create economic activity. The reality, folks, is that spending for things like education, spending for things like healthcare, spending for all these other things are much more multiplicative than tax cuts. And especially because tax cuts go to whom? Wealthier people. Even if everybody got a 2% tax cut, given that our wealth is so skewed towards the top, a 2% tax cut for somebody making $10,000 is only about $200. But a 2% tax cut for somebody making $2 million is over $200,000 in tax cuts, right? So, over $400 million in tax. So let's understand how the system works all together and how this skewing to the top works. Jake Tapper did very little. In fact, he allowed the Speaker of the House, Johnson, to come on your air and lie to you as far as most of these tax cuts or the tax cuts that they're doing are somehow just going to be reflected onto those people who didn't deserve to have SNAP, those people who didn't deserve to have Medicaid. Though he spoke about able-bodied people working. Well, what happens if you're that able-bodied person taking care of somebody in hospice? What happens if you're an able-bodied person with 3 kids that you can't afford the care for those kids? There are reasons why these laws aren't written to say, well, if you can work, you get no care because you can work and there's a job available for you. If there's a job available for you, but you can't take care of your kids if you have that job, is there a job really available for you? If we had a society like many of the Scandinavian countries that really believe in family values, that really believe that if you are working, you deserve the support to have your kids taken care of if you can't be with them. If you had a humane system that says you deserve health care, whether you make $1,000 or $1 million, then it would make sense. Now, what Jake Tapper did is he allowed Johnson to come on air and spin several lies. One, that the cuts that they're making to Medicaid, that the cuts they're making to SNAP, that the cuts they're making to Meals on Wheels are those cuts that are for people that are undeserving of said aid. That's a lie. When he goes out there and he talks about dynamic scoring for this bill. That's a lie. When he goes out there and talks about the great economy that Donald Trump had, that's a lie. And when he goes ahead and talk about the deficit not being blown out of proportion by this bill, that's a lie. And what Jake Tapper did, it's he gave him a platform to plant those seeds. He gave him a platform to plant those seeds. Well, and you know what though? That's what we're here for, to get rid of that platform. Well, Paul Fleming sent a video. I haven't quite listened to it yet, but it looked intriguing. So what? Let's go ahead and listen to that video that Paul put out there. Let me put it in the middle of the screen and see what it sounds like. Here we go.
We know when it comes down to his criminality, he is not qualified to serve, but this is just absolutely deplorable. So nothing else, because I don't know where he's ever going to go. And I don't think that those that have gone through West Point expected to have their commander in chief address them and start talking about trophy wives or start talking about how he had so many investigations. What a great reminder that you are not qualified to be the person that potentially will command us as troops to go into war. Like, that is not instilling confidence whatsoever. And honestly, our troops deserve better. Our graduates deserve better. We as a country deserve better. And frankly, if we are going to ever be seen as the world leaders that we historically have been, the world deserves better. It is time for Republicans to start calling him out and start questioning his mental acuity and whether or not he is equipped to serve mentally. We know when it comes down to his criminality, he is not qualified to serve, but this is just absolutely deplorable. So,
Yes, it's actually very deplorable, as you say, my dear Representative Jasmine Crockett. I interviewed Jasmine Crockett about 3 times. Interestingly, now that she has become the darling spokesperson, I don't get replies from her or her team. Wow, come on, guys, hear me out here. Anyway, folks, look, we have to take the country. You remember how the Tea Party used to say, let's take the country back? Of course, nobody had taken it from them, but we really have to do our job and make sure, number one, that this bill doesn't pass. So I'm going to tell you what I do every single time. The bill is still not official. It still has to go through the Senate, and then it still has to come back into conference to get it taken care of. So, my urge to all of you right now is still, folks, this stuff is not done. You are still in command, and you must continue to contact your congressperson. You must continue to educate your friends. Look, there are some people that are immutable. There are some people that there is nothing you're going to say, even if they start to feel the pain, they will not change. Don't waste your time with those. You know, don't hurt harm them. Remember, it's a mental defect. So treat it as it is, a mental problem. And you won't ever harm or hate a sick person. But anybody who fails to see what Donald Trump is doing to America right now is mentally ill. I mean, there's no other way to express that. You have to be mentally ill to look at what that Donald Trump going out to West Point and talking about trophy wives. Come on. Talking about, I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. So we have to pretty much take control of our own lives and make sure. Joyce Aiken says, question: does the BBB have something in it regarding elections? Actually, it has something in it worse than elections, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought that up because what I need to do is play you. Thank you for bringing that up, Joyce. I want to play something for. I think I have enough time to play it. I think I have enough time to play it because it is something that I looked at a few days ago, and it just came up on my TikTok today, and I said, you know what? I better play that for the audience today, and I forgot to do so. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now.
Is Donald Trump about to kill democracy in the USA? It's a question that has to be asked because Trump's one big beautiful bill act, which is his budget bill, which right now is in front of the House of Representatives in the US Congress, does include a clause which could literally destroy US democracy. Now that's illogical, of course. A budget bill should not include a provision that kills democracy. But this one does, because Trump is in a hurry to get laws passed that give him ultimate power in the USA. And that's what he's doing with this budget clause. And it's so important that I'm going to read it. It says, no court of the United States may use appropriated funds to enforce a contempt citation for failure to comply with an injunction or temporary restraining order if no security was given when the injunction or order was issued. Now, that sounds a bit like gobbledygook, and in a very real sense it is. But what it really means is this. No federal court in the USA may enforce a contempt action, and that's because they would need to use federal funds to do that, and they're being denied the right to use funds for that purpose. And what that means is that if a court ruled that what Donald Trump is doing is illegal, and he then ignores them, which he has been doing, there will in the future be nothing at all that the court can do to enforce its ruling, because it won't have access to the funds to do anything about what Trump is up to. It follows then, quite simply and quite straightforwardly, that if this piece of legislation, which looks like a budget provision, but which is actually driving a stake through the heart of US democracy, is going to give Trump exactly what he wants. This innocuous-looking clause puts him above the rule of law in the USA. It effectively makes him King Donald. This is the end of the arrangements of constitutional balance that were meant to prevent abuse within the administration of US government. This is, in fact, the end of constitutional law, because this is not constitutional, but Congress plans to pass it. And in that case, this means the end of democracy in the USA as it has been known, imperfect as it has been. Trump can, if this law is passed, pursue who he wants, break any law that he wants, imprison anyone he wants, expel anyone he wants. And there will be nothing a court can do to stop him, because even if they rule that what he does is unlawful, he can ignore them, knowing that they will have no power to actually enforce their decision. As Robert Reich, the noted commentator on US current affairs, has put it, with this single provision, Trump would have crowned himself king. No Congress and no court could stop him. Even if a future Congress were to try to stop him, it could not do so without the power of the courts to enforce their hearings, investigations, subpoenas, and laws. So in other words, this doesn't only stop the courts from interfering with what Trump wants to do, it actually completely neuters Congress as well. So what then? If the midterm elections reject Trump, he can ignore what Congress says. This law will let him do that. So what if he suspends elections, in fact, and the courts object? He can do that, because there is nothing that the courts could do to... Is Donald Trump...
And folks, you have to understand, and by the way, Joyce, thank you for bringing that up, that comment, because you reminded me that I needed to play this. But let me tell you what he means by it even defeats Congress. And let me explain what they're saying there. Check this out. This is important. If Congress passes the law and the president signs the law, it is now law. It can then go to somebody that has standing can challenge the law to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can then decide if that law is constitutional or not. If the Supreme Court decides that law is unconstitutional, then Congress can actually that law is null and void. However, if the Supreme Court does not say that law is unconstitutional. Then for Congress to override, let's say the Democrats win the next election, and let's say it stands, right? That Congress cannot override that law without 2/3 majority. And do you think they're going to get 2/3 majority to overturn that veto that Donald Trump would present if that law is overturned by a majority in Congress? He would never do it. So, I mean, there are so many fights that we have out there that has to be taken care of. And this is one of them. But what a lot of this stuff is showing is that our Constitution was always designed for with the expectation that some level of honorable people would be in charge, right? That people are willing to not exploit the flaws of the document. And what Donald Trump has proven is that he doesn't give a damn. He'll exploit the flaws left and right. Anyway, we only have about a minute to go, so therefore it is time for my ask. And what I'd like to ask those of you who are listening to the program is to become subscribers of our program. We need at least another 592 paid subscribers. And how can we do that? If you go to politicsdoneright.com/substack, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, you can become a paid subscriber. You can sign up to subscribe, and you can sign up to become a paid subscriber. And I put that link in both the Substack chat as well as the standard YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and all these other things. Look, this is work that, you know, the right wing invest in their media, bloggers, vloggers, podcasters, everything. The left depends on all of you to simply be a part of it. So I'm asking you kindly, help us defer the cost of what we're doing here. Please continue to go ahead and support however you can. Right now, I'm asking you to become paid subscribers via our newsletter. That is how we fund everything that we do, and it's not just our radio shows. It is what we do on Substack. It's what we do on TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. We are tied in to make sure to flood the zone and promote our message. The other side does it, and they invest in it. I'm asking you to also invest in allowing us to do this work. We can only do that with our paid subscribers chipping in. And again, it's a coffee a month or so. And I know if you saw me once a month, we would sit down and have a cup of coffee. Let's continue to have these virtual coffees. All of you who can, please subscribe. Please become paid subscribers. All right, got to get out of here. Thank you so kindly in advance for anyone who decides to subscribe today. Remember, you get access to all of our books free of charge, and you get a whole lot of other perks. So please consider becoming paid subscribers of our Substack channel. It's Egberto Off the Record. Egberto Off the Record. Anyway, got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. Love you all. Thank you very much for listening. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.